I get a lot of people asking me questions about whether they're good enough or if they're good enough for the animation industry. This one's always a tricky question to answer because there's so many different styles and types of animation, as well as different skills needed for a production. In this video, I'll try my best to talk about how to find out if you're good enough for the animation industry, from my general perspective. First off, a word from our sponsors because this is a YouTube channel after all, and it happens. The Ridge Wallet. It's small, sleek, industrial. The biggest thing about the Ridge Wallet is that it isn't awkward. Look, here's my previous wallet. Bulgy, crowded, and awkward. Holds cards, cash, and receipts, amongst other things. Now, here's my Ridge Wallet. Small, compact, minimalistic. When you see someone whip out a wallet like this, they've got their life organized and an overall winner. Even if it isn't true, it's all about presentation, and the Ridge Wallet gets that. Don't let its tiny size fool you. It can hold up to 12 cards plus room for cash. You've got an option for a strap or clip. Customize it. I've used it and tested it myself, and it's much more compact than my old wallet, even when my old wallet has 0 cards in it. There's over 30 colors and styles ranging from the ordinary schemes to Hawaiian patterns to carbon fiber and burnt titanium. I got gunmetal because it makes me feel safe.
Whoa! Don't shoot! Here! Have my wallet! Here! Too bad it's gunmetal.
Look, it's got at least 30,000 5-star reviews. In fact, I never really talked to my friends about it, and some of these friends already had it in their pockets. The durable materials means each wallet comes with a lifetime warranty. You can buy this one wallet and carry it for life. The Ridge team is pretty sure that you'll like it, and that they'll let you test drive it for 45 days. If you feel that this isn't your jam, you can always send it back for a full refund, if you don't love it. Last but not least, it's made with RFID blocking technology that protects you from digital pickpocketers. Take that, cyberpunk douchebags. So if you're interested in getting a Ridge wallet, get 10% off today by using the code TONIKORIDGE. Link in the description below.
It's so small that you wouldn't even realize that it wasn't there at all. Back to the video.
Hey guys, it's Toniko Pantoja, and today I'd like to talk about how you can determine if you're good enough or skilled enough for the animation industry. Now, I'm only talking about my experiences with mostly in LA or the California Hollywood industry of animation. So I really can't talk about other things such as what it's like to be in the animation community in France, in Europe, in Japan, in Russia, etc. These are just based off from my experiences alone. And there are so many points that I do want to get across, but the first point I want to make is more of a question to you guys. The question I want to ask you guys is, what kind of animation projects would you like to get involved at the most? I think if you're just asking the questions such as, how do I know if I'm good enough for the industry, is just too general. And I think this answer will be heavily influenced by the type of projects or a specific type of project that you'd like to get into personally. Like film and video games, there's just so many different types of genres, age groups, and styles in the world of animation and its productions. So would you like to work for TV shows that's for early childhood, ages 7 to 12? Do you like sitcom style shows? Do you like action adventure? Do you like raunchy humor? While most of these jobs will definitely require you to have a basic understanding of, let's say, design, storyboard, or animation, they all ask for specific different skill sets that might be required for the job. So let's say we take someone who boards really well action scenes, has worked for Studio Mir, Legend of Korra stuff. Do you think that person would suit really well in a show like SpongeBob SquarePants? While that person might nail the drawing aspect of that show, the tone, the humor, and the style of the storytelling is a completely different game. So if that artist doesn't have that naturally, they might actually suffer throughout the production. One thing people tend to forget about animation is that it's kind of like casting in TV shows or live action film. You may be technically accomplished, you may have the best skills for it, your drawing and staging and design sensibilities are just sublime, but you might just not be the right fit for a certain production. So if you're developing a portfolio for work, for example, you might want to start thinking about a studio you have in mind you want to work for or a certain production and cater that portfolio for that studio. That way it's easier for recruiters to know exactly who you are and what type of work you want to get into. When it comes to portfolio making, there's a lot of different debates and discussions talking about what makes a good portfolio. Some people like to show variety in different styles, some people like to just focus on a single aesthetic. All I can say is that make that portfolio best represent you. So if you feel like you want to do a generalist portfolio where you kind of just show everything, understand that's the type of vibe that you're giving. Otherwise, I just say, just understand and figure out what kind of animation productions that you'd like to get into, and that will kind of determine how your portfolio for work will look like. However, this is not to say that you have to be closed-minded and disregard any other form that isn't your strength. I would just tell you to keep working and improving on your general foundations. If you feel like you want to work on other productions that's outside your comfort zone, then I would start improving on the skills needed for those type of productions. So I can be seen as someone who can do the work for that certain production when needed, even if it isn't my main priority in the type of work or genre I want to do. So if you're really tight on options, at least you have the enough skill set to actually do some work. Another way to determine if you're good enough for the industry, or more specifically, good enough for a certain animation production, is to do tests for a show. Usually a studio will release a call out asking for people to partake in a test for storyboarding, design, or whatever it is for potential hires for a certain production. So just like that statement I made about casting, tests are like auditioning for a show or a play in real life. But for artists in animation, we have tests. So an animation test usually looks like they give you a prompt as well as reference material from the production. So for storyboarding, for example, they give you a few pages of the script or maybe one page. They'll give you a model sheet with the character designs and some layout drawings for the backgrounds. They'll probably offer some style guides, so how to draw a character or how not to draw a character. They'll give prompts or headers or advices. So for storyboarding, for example, they'll say things like milk the gags, milk the acting, make it cinematic as hell, or make it funny. Sometimes they'll send you material of what exactly they're looking for. So for storyboarding, again, for example, they'll send sample storyboards from the production. This doesn't happen all the time. However, one thing I'd like to add is that nailing the overall look, the drawing sensibilities and all that, to me, as a 2D animator, I find that quite easy, since I do have to always work in different drawing styles. However, some tests are likely to add other supplemental stuff. So one production I was doing a test for had these mini games where they'd ask you, how would this character's bedroom look like? What will this character's iPhone look like? Or design a scary monster that might appear in an episode. While a lot of these things might come off as uncommon, this is also another way of showrunners or recruiters to find out if you're the right fit for a production, and to see if some of the tone, the gag, the humor, and the overall aesthetic and execution just comes off natural to you. However, just understand this. Most of the tests will just ask you to see if you can match the overall style, tone, and the drawing sensibilities of an animation production. However, I'd like to repeat myself here. It's just to see if you're good enough for the certain production. It doesn't really necessarily mean a reflection of your skill set. While yes, having the skills is crucial and can easily determine whether you get the job or not, there are a lot of great artists who have tested out for shows that didn't pick them up. There can be many reasons behind this, but the overall saying is that they just weren't the right fit for the show. So that's kind of why it's tricky to determine if you're good enough for the overall industry just for this one test for a certain production, since many tests I have done in the past required me to adapt to different styles and sensibilities, or that they already had someone else in mind. The length of these tests usually change. Some studios ask for a week turnover to see how you can deliver a certain task within a certain time period, or some tests do not have a time limit at all, and they're much more flexible. And remember, it's kind of like auditioning. The third point I want to make is to compare your work to those currently in the industry, and this is probably the most common and popular advice that I hear time to time. Compare yourself to artists that work in the industry that you want to get into, or artists that you kind of want to strive to be. I do have some thoughts about this advice, but I'll talk about the good things first. So first off, the good things about this advice is that you have something to have reference with to see if your skills match or don't match a certain production just by looking at someone else's work. If you feel that you can match the standard of their work, then you might be good enough. If you feel that your skills are far below, then you might need to spend more time reworking your foundations and your overall skills. So keep practicing, improve your skills. One of my favorite ways to improve is just to work on personal projects, since I get to deal with so many different factors instead of just one single skill set. And it encourages me to think more creatively. The only problem I have with this advice is that the skill set and the amount of work or the standard of work tends to fluctuate for these professional artists. Some of these artists are really, really bad, and I'm gonna say that out now. There are some bad artists that work in the industry that are just terrible at drawing. Their drawings are so unappealing, yet there's something that they're delivering that allows them to stay at work. So there may be some people or some students out there who will look at this work and think, oh, if I'm just above this person right here, then I'm definitely going to be hired at places. And if they don't get any work, they just be bitter about it. The other problem is seeing someone who is ridiculously talented, seeing someone who just does way above and beyond in their work. The type of work that only comes once in a lifetime, or that it's really unstable to maintain. And there will be people who will see these works and think that this is the golden standard, or this is a standard just to get work in the industry. And it can be completely off-putting because of how unrealistic the expectations are. While I do encourage for people to always shoot for higher than they usually do, I think it's also about knowing your priorities in your work, and it'll show. And recruiters will see that. So for example, you want to get into storyboarding for a production, right? Would you emphasize more on the strong poses and the storytelling, or would you just focus more on the flashy action? Neither of those are wrong answers. It's really about knowing who you are and what you can deliver to the table. So my advice for this point is to look at many different artists in the field. And that's where you'll discover a common or certain trait that most of these artists that you're looking at have. Find out the quota, the timeline, and what's expected for the job. Get a general idea of the quota or the amount of work required to do for a certain job. So for storyboarding, for example, it usually takes 2 to 3 weeks of the first pass boarding, then you pitch it to your showrunners and your directors and the producers, and then you do another week or 2 of cleanup. Well, I think it's like 2 to 3 weeks. It really depends on the show. And that's for you to find out. Another thing that you might want to consider is finding out what software they use. Some productions may require you to use Photoshop, or some productions might require to use the Toon Boom package. While I'm a firm believer that software doesn't best reflect who you are as an artist and your skill, it does matter for the general pipeline of a production, such as how the files are distributed, how the files are used, and the formats needed for, all these sorts of things. Some of you guys might be thinking, wait, I don't have the money, or I can't afford these licenses to be able to use or just to learn these softwares, so I'm doomed from the start. How do I even learn the skill set for this job? If you've used one software for animation or painting, it's easy to transfer those skill sets into new software. Because for me, software is really all about knowing what buttons to press and just how to use those tools in general. The truth is that most people in the industry only use about 20% or less of what a software can offer. And there are many times where people already in the industry are still asking questions on how to do certain basic things within a software. If you just wanted to learn the basics of the software, get a trial version of it, watch some tutorials of it, understand what buttons do, what buttons don't. But other than that, you're really utilizing your own skill set for the software. So recruiters and studios still look at who you are as an artist and what kind of work you can deliver aside from software. To be honest, I took a gig where I straight up did not know how to use Toon Boom Storyboard, but I said I did, and over the week, I watched some tutorials, I asked friends for help, and I learned the program. Not all of it, but I learned the basics of what the program can do and what's necessary for work. So the bit of transferring from one software to another software, it really isn't all that hard. It's just getting used to different habits. But aside from that, get a general knowledge of what the job is asking you to do, whether it's a cartoony style or a realistic style, whether the storyboarding has a lot of animated poses or not. Just understand what they're looking for the line of work. And if you can do that, great. This can be tricky because some people will get it and some people won't, which is getting feedback from people within the industry. Now, most people I personally know in the industry don't really have the time to look at everyone's portfolios or every email that gets sent to them asking for them to look at a student's portfolio. And there are some who are generous for that and will just give their feedback without any form of compensation. You also have to understand that most of these professional artists probably get a lot of emails from the same type of people, or they're just really busy with their line of work. Either way, they'll probably never respond. Even I never get response from my coworkers and my acquaintances, but let's say they do, alright? Then this is great because you have someone from the industry who is willing to give their feedback, who understands their field right now, and the field that they're in, to give an answer that best caters to you. They can tell you exactly what your strengths are, what you need to work on, and how you can get there. Lately, there have been online events where volunteer professional artists look at a collection of portfolios from volunteers and give a live-on critique session. And this is why it's also a good idea to keep track of an artist's social media. So if they have a critique session going on, or if they're doing something for charity and they're willing to look at portfolios for a small price, it could be good to take advantage for that. Sometimes these artists will just do it for free, but it's not always common that people respond. I mean, I get a ton of emails asking about what software I use, and I've posted that many times in the descriptions, in my YouTube channel, and on my website. Or they're asking the same questions that I've answered again and again. So I get both sides, that it does suck being the person to send stuff and never hearing back, or being the person who has to deal with the same type of email again and again. But if you find a person that's willing to work with you, then that's amazing. Anyways, I just want to wrap this video up by just saying, just focus on your own growth right now and don't worry too much about knowing if you're good enough or if you aren't good enough for the industry. Because there are professionals who've reached the point where they have the work and the skill set to at least get the work, they get the job, and they don't really grow from there. They just stay at their comfort zone, and that really sucks to see. So all I ask of you is just to keep growing and to really invest in your own personal work too. Because that personal project may end up being your career and you might not have to refer or rely on a studio for work. If you want to get better at certain things like filmmaking, study films. If you want to get better at animation, study those pencil tests and see how those animators figured out acting. This field is a lifetime of just endless studying and learning, so when you do get an offer from a job, don't assume that you're just good enough for the industry or good in general. Just understand that they see you as a person that can do the work that they're looking for. Anyways, thanks for watching this video, I guess. Bye. Interested in learning hand-drawn animation or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end? Have a look at the store where you'll find the complete Introduction to 2D Animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.